The U.S. Senate passed the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act yesterday, sending the $800 billion bill to the president's desk for signature. Among other things, the bill will repeal the COVID-19 vaccine for military members. However, the NDAA does not reinstate members of the military who were discharged or had benefits cut off for not getting the shot. And with both the White House and the Pentagon still on record as wanting the mandate in place, what could this mean for military members who will claim a religious exemption from the shot? Joining me now to discuss this is Danielle Runyan, Senior Counsel at First Liberty Institute. In January 2022, First Liberty Institute won the first injunction against the military's vaccine mandate in Navy SEALs versus Biden. Danielle, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you. First, just tell me what your reaction was when you learned that the NDAA would include language ending the vaccine mandate for service members.
Well, it was certainly a pleasure to hear. It's a good first step. We need to move on from the mandate for sure and be focused on national security. However, the fact that this is not going to protect those who have been punished or discharged or in the process of being discharged, that highlights why our case is so important and why it must continue.
Now, tell us a bit about your case. What are you hoping to accomplish?
So in the Navy SEALs case, we achieved a preliminary injunction, which basically stopped any punishment or any Navy service members from continuing to be discharged for failure to follow the COVID-19 vaccine mandate order. We received a preliminary injunction for the entire class. So for over 3,400 sailors, they remain in place and they're able to work. But we need to still address the discrimination that occurred here, the punishment, the mistreatment, and eventually obtain a permanent injunction so that this doesn't happen again.
Now, explain how this could happen again, because the headline here, we think, is that the NDAA has language that's ending this mandate, and everybody celebrates that. But why is there concern? What could the Department of Defense do subsequent to the NDAA being passed that would essentially reinstate this, or is that the actual concern?
Well, what we see is that there was language in the 2022 NDAA that talked about the service characterization that those who are being discharged for failure to follow what Congress had said was the lawful order to get vaccinated, that language still is in this 2023 NDAA. So presumptively, the DoD could continue to discharge members who failed to follow the order. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I mentioned in the top of the segment that the bill does not reinstate anyone who has been discharged because of the mandate and their refusal to comply with the mandate previously. Now that this mandate has been revoked, is there any hope? Is there any opportunity for those who were dismissed that they might get their jobs back?
Well, we'll see what happens in the new year. We'll see what happens when Congress comes back from break. We'll see if there's any new legislation that's put on the table. But for now, again, that's why our case continues and why it's so important. People are excited that the mandate for those who are entering the service and even for those of us who are continuing to serve, that we don't have to be forced to comply with the requirement. But we still need to address the discrimination that occurred and the failure to honor religious liberties.
Danielle, you hinted at it there. I understand that you remain in military service. Tell me why this is so important to you as a personal matter.
Well, for one, I'm a plaintiff in the Spence case that we have here at First Liberty. It's important to me because I very much have an interest in our national security. I wish to continue to serve. I love my job in the military. And that's why so many of us are fighting to remain employed and to keep our jobs, whether we're active duty or reserve. We're patriotic individuals. We took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And we just want to move on from this. We want it addressed, certainly, but we want to move on. We want to continue to serve. And that's really the goal here for all of us.
Well, we want to move on could be the motto for the last few years, I suppose, in so many different ways. But Danielle, because you are in the reserves, you have relationships with people in the military, you're working with clients who are in the military. How would you describe the impact all of this debate over vaccine mandates and religious exemptions has had on morale of our troops?
It's been devastating to morale. For a year and a half or more, we've been focused on this discussion and focused on the fact that people were faced with losing their livelihoods, losing their benefits, losing their pensions. I certainly thought that I was going to retire as a military member. I had no desire to stop serving at a certain point in time. Many of the individuals who are part of the Navy class, a part of the Air Force class, that's being litigated in the courts, entirely devastating to their families. It's just been really a horrible year and a half. We want to move on from it. And we want to continue to serve proudly as we had before. We want the discrimination to end, and we want to fix this problem so that going forward, religious liberties are honored in the military services.
And Danielle, the military has acknowledged difficulty meeting their recruitment goals. And it's hard to prove what it is exactly that's leading to those challenges for the military. Anecdotally, do you think that what they're dealing with with requiring mandates, vaccine mandates like this, and just kind of the general climate around the military, is that discouraging people from signing up to serve?
I absolutely think it is. I think that even the prospect of boosters for those who maybe were coerced or didn't want to take the initial round of vaccines, they feel like this is something that they probably didn't want to do. The prospect of having to do it again, I know that many were very disgruntled about that. And I know that for those on the outside, just the thought of having to deal with this and look at all this litigation. Who wants to be bothered with that? We need to get back to focusing on national security and defending our nation.
Seems like a simple premise that we all can get behind, and maybe that can be our Christmas wish for the new year. Danielle Runyan, First Liberty, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for your service to our country as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.